What is the big improvement from example A to example B that we see? What did I do to make this one look better? Was it option A? I adjusted the gas volume. Option B, better torch angle. Or option C, I switched to a different filler alloy. Now, when beginners first start out with TIG welding, this is what's common here. We can see that the pass looks inconsistent from start to finish. The shape flares out at the end here, and we can see that the reinforcement falls flat and the edges look hollow and the pass is concave. Now looking at this here, this is another thing that's really common. We can also see stuff like this. See how the filler material is kind of stuck in the middle of the pass? We don't see the edges quite blending into the base material at all. And if we were to flip this one over, we would not see any penetration on the other side. Boo. Now the perfect amount of filler material is what's going to get us the perfect blended edge like this here. And we want this line to be completely consistent from the start of the pass all the way to the finish of it. That's how you're going to be able to flip over your plate and see good penetration. And make sure you stick around for the tip. Later in this video, I'm going to show you how to get really shiny stuff guaranteed. Now, here's what you are going to do. This is step number one. We need to think about things as a precarious balance between two important variables. This is going to be the overall heat input and the filler material amount. These are two main factors that have to be absolutely perfectly in balance with one another. If these variables fall out of balance, our welding shape and the details that we want so badly are going to fall apart right away. Now take a look at this example here again. We can see that things actually start out looking pretty decent, but around the last third or so, things start to fall apart. Okay, quiz time. What happened here? What do you think? I'm gonna give you three options that you're gonna pick from. Check this out. Is it going to be A, the joint was tacked with a gap at the end, a bad fit up? Is it option B, the torch distance was pulled back slightly and the arc cone lost its focus at the end? Or is it option C, the heat input into the plate has become excessive here? Okay, this is what we're gonna do here. This is the first of three questions I'm gonna ask you in this episode here today. What I want you to do is put your score in the comments below at the end of this episode. Let's see how you do. For example, when I first started out learning, my score would have been 0 out of 3, but that's not important here right now. Okay, you ready for the first answer? Now, while the other two options that I gave you are decent possibilities here, option C was the correct answer. As we approach the end of this joint, the overall heat input is becoming excessive. Think about it like this. The first 2/3 of this pass look pretty good. If the heat input was perfect here and the amount of filler material was matched to this heat input perfectly, we can see that we are running along with virtually no problems. But then as the heat input overall starts to increase, and the amount of filler material being used stays the same, the pass that was flowing so nicely begins to fall flat because our balance falls out of whack. Okay, let's take a look at this grumpy little fella right here. Again, look at how the filler material is just sitting on the joint kind of. We have no proper fusion into the base material, and this one stands absolutely no chance of getting any results as far as penetration on the backside. Now, with this example here, think about our balance between these important variables. The amount of heat input and the filler material being used are not balanced properly together. You could argue that the amount of heat being used was insufficient, or you could even argue that the amount of filler material was slightly excessive, or even a combination of both of these factors. So, when wanting to get better results with the TIG welding that you are doing already, you need to start thinking about things in relation as far as the balance between these two variables that we're talking about here. If what you're seeing as far as what you're practicing is starting to heat up and getting pretty spicy, obviously using too much heat input may be a problem, or insufficient filler material may also be the issue, or like we said, perhaps a combination of both of these things. Now again, we can also go the opposite way with this one. If somebody's using an excessive amount of filler material or an insufficient amount of heat input, you're gonna get grumpy looking edges like this here. Boo! When you're experiencing problems and you're looking at your own work, try breaking it down, thinking about things as this approach as far as this balance between these two variables. This is the first tip that we're gonna talk about here that's gonna get you much better results as far as thinking about the work that you're seeing. You can then make adjustments and apply these things to the next passes that you do. You're gonna start to see those improvements that we want. This is gonna come in really handy when you're starting to weld some really thick stuff that might be a little bit sticky to get going, as well as this approach to thinking when working on really thin stuff as well. The amount of filler material that you are using has to match the amount of heat input perfectly. You wanna see those lines on the edge of the weld blending in butter smooth. We want a nice transition between filler material and base material, and you're gonna see some results on the other side side of your welding joint that shows some penetration as long as the material you are welding is not too thick. Okay, look at this welding pass right here. What do you think the problem is here? What can we do to make this one look better? You ready for this one? Quiz time. Here's your options. You ready? Okay, what are some things that are gonna make this look better? We have option A, a slower travel speed. We have option B, a tighter stepping distance. Or option C, switch to a smaller filler material. Any ideas? This is a trick that's gonna help your welding to look much more consistent and much more robotic-like. That's right, robots. Now, I personally love the look of this one, and the answer is going to be B, using a tighter stepping distance. Now, how you doing with these answers? We got one more really good one to go here. I'm excited to see how everybody does with this. Okay, take a look at this example here. Let's go. This is common when a lot of people are in a hurry. A lot of the time when people are rushing your work, you can see stuff that looks like this. The stepping distance becomes too far apart. And again, if you're not familiar with the term stepping distance, this basically means the distance in between each step where filler material is added to a weld. Now, when this happens, this can cause a couple problems to happen. The first is that the line on the edge of the weld is going to be going in and out as opposed to staying straight. And obviously this becomes way worse if this stepping distance becomes even further apart. Hang on a second, come here. These are all just a few really small tips that you're gonna learn in my TIG welding program online. These are the most strategic and comprehensive TIG welding programs that you're gonna find online ever. And if you wanna get good at TIG welding but you don't have time for welding school, these classes are for you. And they're cheaper than welding school too. Learn in the comfort of your own home shop or wherever you practice. Learn at your own pace, at your own time. There is no set schedule. There's no expiration date. You pick up any time where you left off. I have had thousands of people go through these programs. And if you wanna try out my TIG welding courses, you can check out free classes that are on my website right now for free. Okay, now getting back to our details with the stepping distance here, the second thing that we can see happen is that an excessive stepping distance is going to expose the center of each puddle as you move. Now, with a welding puddle, do you know where crater cracks can start to form? That's right, they can start to form in the center of each puddle. Now, in order to prevent these cracks from forming, we need to make sure that the center of each puddle is properly covered up. Now, this can also be a problem with welding connections, and this means joining separate passes together. Someone can do an individual pass where the stepping distance is absolutely perfect. However, as they travel around a corner or something like this gap can form in between the two passes, and we can then lose the lines on the edges, or the center of a puddle can be exposed and we can most likely form a crater crack. That's right, even doing things virtually perfect with each individual pass, everything can be ruined by one little blunder with your welding connections. So let's make our passes look even better. You ready? I definitely recommend to tighten this stepping distance up a touch. This gives your welding a really consistent look right away, and it's also going to help to straighten out the line on the edges of your passes. Of course, we are going to cover the center of each step we take to prevent any cracks later, and I just love the look of this. It helps to make things look much more consistent and way better overall. Now, going back to our first tip that we talked about here, when we tighten up our stepping distance, we also need to make sure that we slightly decrease the amount of filler material being used. This is going to help to prevent overfilling with your passes, which again can lead to bad edges. I would say that this is probably the biggest tip to give you some instant results on getting better looking passes overall. Check, 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 check. And as well as making sure that this is applied carefully when welding around corners or connections, your stuff is going to start to show a big improvement in consistency and overall looks right away, especially with this next tip right here. Here we go. Quiz number 3. Let's go. Look at the comparison between these two welds. What is the big improvement from example A to example B that we see? What did I do to make this one look better? Was it option A, I adjusted the gas volume? Option B, better torch angle? Or option C, I switched to a different filler alloy? Ooh, this one's good. Those are all good options. Which one you got? What I'm going to show you here is absolutely dead simple. The answer of what I did here was which one was it? Option A, I readjusted the gas volume. All right, before you go fiddling around with the gas volume on your bottle, hang on and check this out. This is actually really important. What size cup are you using? Are you using a gas lens or are you using a diffuser? These are important variables that people do not consider when they are setting or adjusting their gas volume. People just read on the internet or they hear they should use 15 CFH of gas and they think, all right, 15 CFH of gas it is. But like I said, what gear are you using? A diffuser, a gas lens, what size cup? These variables make a very important difference. Some people prefer to use a small cup for TIG welding aluminum, like a number 4 or number 5 or something like that. In this case, this is pretty simple type welding. I would recommend using just a diffuser type setup. And in this case, this would mean that your gas volume is set a little bit lower. Now, personally, lately, I like using a number 6 cup, number 7 at the absolute biggest. So in this case, I would use a gas lens setup in my torch. And using a gas lens in this situation, I would nudge my gas levels up a little bit. Now, no matter what setup you are using, we are trying to find the threshold of the amount of gas that you can run, because as you start to increase the amount of gas that you're using ever so slightly, you're going to notice that your stuff starts to get shinier. That's right, this tip is going to get you some much better looking, shinier stuff. Now, as far as running more gas, there is a point of diminishing returns here, and it happens very fast. Be careful for this. As you start to run too much gas, you're going to notice that your puddle is going to start to become a little bit turbulent, and it's going to start to become a little bit unstable. Obviously, this is what we want to avoid. Now, this is particularly noticeable or problematic when welding around corners, welding around pipe or other round surfaces, and this happens especially so if you are using a diffuser type setup. You'll notice that the cleaning action around your welding will start to look a little bit crazy, a little bit erratic and uneven. In this event, this typically means that you are running too much gas. Like I said, if I want shiny stuff, I'm going to try and squeak my gas up a little bit more. But again, finding the sweet spot subjectively for the exact setup that I am using in my torch. It's different for everybody. We want to get you some good, absolutely clean and shiny stuff with good cleaning action, then combined with smooth edges that are transitioning well into the base material, and a robotic looking stepping distance as well as proper connections. How did you do with your scores? Put them in the comments below. Let me see them. Absolutely no judgment. We're having fun here today. And if you missed the earlier steps, the timestamps to them are right here. You can go back and review them individually. But this episode here is going to get you some incredible results with way better arc control to your TIG welding for aluminum. This stuff is especially important when welding on some thinner stuff as well as some fine aluminum TIG welding you might be doing. Watch this episode next. This is a very important one. Do a random act of kindness for a stranger today. I'm Dusty James. Phil and Chill. We'll talk soon. Peace.